All right, guys. Well, first off, thank you for hopping on. Be the market expert. All of you are wanting to be the expert of the market today, and I love it. So, first thing, obviously, this is the class normally led by Charles. As I was just telling Lee, he thought he didn't have enough on his plate already, so he became our newest regional tech trainer as well. So doesn't mean we're not going to see him anymore. He's just trying to get meetings figured out and schedules aligned. So today I'll be running this one again. But again, I appreciate you all hopping on. And if you guys do have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt me. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So the first one I wanted to dive into here, this is going to be an article on manufactured housing. Now, it does have some political pieces in here, which I won't touch on, but I do think there's some key pieces and another avenue that we as agents have for buyers, more specifically first-time buyers or investors. So essentially, what this one's going to start talking about has this quote at the top. Most men appear never to have considered what a house is and are actually, though, needlessly poor all their lives because they think that they must have such a one as their neighbors have. Sounds kind of confusing, but if we break that down, essentially what it's saying, most buyers aren't thinking critically about housing. They're comparing themselves to their neighbors, which in turn, that creates a bad financial decision because everybody's different. But it does create more opportunity for us. So I don't know about you, where you're at in your business, but I know for me specifically, I have ran into where I have buyers right on the threshold here in Colorado, at least, where they just can't quite afford a single family residence. So they're looking at condos or townhomes. And in their head, manufactured home, mobile homes, those are no thank you. They don't want to get into it. They're junky, they're beater. We don't want to go live in a trailer park, sure, whatever it might be. Well, this article is kind of exploring that avenue. And so um, as we get into here, essentially what it's saying, the National Association of Realtors, it's saying that the appreciation value of single family homes from 2019 to 2026 appreciated of 58.6%. With that being said, manufactured homes with land appreciated 70.1%, and then manufactured homes that don't own the land, they actually lease the land, that was 51.6%, so slightly less than the single family residence. But essentially, what that's saying is manufactured homes are appreciating at nearly the same or better rate, depending on if it has land or not. Um, Obviously, this one with owned land, it is outperforming the traditional homes. But obviously, like I was saying, the lease land is a little bit less. So, just something to think about. I know that I've had the buyers that are scared of manufactured homes, but this is just a whole nother route, a whole nother option for them. And manufactured doesn't necessarily mean mobile home or trailer park. So there's a lot that goes into that as well, and it's really based off of regulations, whether that's uh, city regulations, county regulations, or federal national regulations. Um, so one of the things, like I was saying, it does get kind of political down here as we go through it. But essentially, one of the things that it does say is from Housing Wire, it notes that the average home price right now is 5 times the median income, is equal to 5 times the average income, which that's unsustainable. That's not going to work. Buyers are looking for more affordability. They're looking for equity, and they want an entry point to get into there right away too. They don't want to have to build that. Which again, this article is essentially talking about. That's what manufacturing housing is bringing to the table. It has those scalable answers. It gives you the affordability, the equity. You can still get the equity, um, and then I mean, you can go right in there. So. Um, Again, maybe you never want to touch manufactured homes. Maybe it's not something interested to you, but there is definitely a big there's a niche of people there that are looking for these specific homes. And then it's also, another route for our buyers that may not understand that this is an option.
Is the
Um,
commission rate the same?
I'm sorry.
Is the commission rate the same?
That's still kind of negotiable with every deal, but it's pretty standard to what we see in the residential as well. It's not, I wouldn't say it's not like commercial where it's completely different, but it's obviously negotiable between the buyers and the sellers. The one thing you see a lot of people will not be interested in these is when you lease the land, because you could own the property, but then if you're on leased land you're going to be paying that lease land every single month for as long as you own the property, and there's usually not a way that you can get that land.
I
So
was
that's
also
just
under the impression that they can't do a traditional 30-year mortgage. Is that still the rule? Or?
that's that's I'm not 100% sure on that one. So that's a good question, and I can find out the answer for you, but I definitely don't want to tell you the wrong one on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So again, like take this with a grain of salt, take it for what it's worth. But it is an option out there that we do have for all of our buyers, especially first-time buyers, investors. I mean, anybody that's looking to gain equity or home ownership, essentially. Um, this is their chance. So again, I mean, if we bring it back to that quote that's up here at the top, your clients don't necessarily need what their neighbors have. They need what works for them in the future. And that's our job as agents to explain that to them, to give them all their options, and to just keep them educated, as well as keeping us educated on what's going on. So, just a cool little article there. That's really all I had for that one. Now, as we dive into this one's pretty big. So, essentially, what this is talking about the security deposits post-closing occupancy agreements. For anyone that took Charles's class, or I'm sorry, Damien's class, and maybe Charles is the red line, um, and the changes in the contracts, there was a change that essentially said that security deposits, the current rule right now in place, security deposits can't equal a maximum more than max of 2 months rent, which obviously limits the protection that we have. So they are now discussing here, and this should be effective January 1st, 2027. But when this goes into effect, basically any residential real estate deal, um, you'll be excluded from that new rule. So now you can set your deposit higher than the max 2 months rent, and you're not going to have any issues. You're going to be, you'll be compliant with them. So I do think that that's huge for down the road. Again, that's not going to be till January 2027. Um, but I think, from where buyers or where we're at now, buyers are hesitant and sellers are stressed when you don't really have an ability to set a deposit, because oftentimes what I do see too is the person buying the home, they'll do a post-closing occupancy and they'll say, oh, you know what, we'll give you free rent, but we want a higher security deposit, and that was no longer an option. And then when you get into rent and you start increasing rent, then the current sellers, who then turn into buy or tenants, they don't want to pay that rent. So oftentimes, a lot of the times I see with the post closing, you'll eliminate the rent and have a higher deposit, which this coming January 2027, we will be able to see that again, and you can set that deposit higher, security deposit. So, um, as far as buyer consultations, if you have people with buyers that ever ask you about this, you can just tell them that if we allow the seller to stay after closing, we can now negotiate a larger security deposit to better protect them. If you're on the listing side of it, you can tell them, if they need extra time after closing, that you can structure an agreement that works. But we can also expect to have the buyer ask for a stronger deposit. But overall, I mean, this change isn't until 2027, but it does give us more flexibility and negotiations. And just another piece, here that I thought would be good to keep everyone educated with. So, I don't know. Has anyone else experienced any of those issues with post-closing security deposits? Anything?
No.
Perfect. No worries. I'm sure you will eventually. It's a whole nother world, but no, it's really not that bad. I mean, this is definitely going to help us, help our clients, help us, and it just gives again that flexibility and negotiation that we can have, that we normally had, that we used to have until they put this new rule in. Um, all right. So the last one, the last article here that I wanted to go over, is going to be the standard one that I think we've seen Charles go over. It's over on Housing Wire, the housing market. Um, a lot of good information here. Now, obviously, essentially what it's saying at the very beginning, market hasn't crashed. I don't think we're anywhere near that. No need to worry. But it is shifting. It has shifted. Obviously, at the beginning of this and at the end of this article, it's always going to talk about the Iran conflict that's going on, which will impact the mortgage rates, the consumer confidence, market activity. But I also think that opens up a world where It might eliminate those people that are on the edge about buying or selling, but now it's also saying that anybody here that is active in this market, they have to because life happens, regardless of what happens with the market, with the world, with any current events, life will still happen to these people. So the buyers that we're seeing are buyers that need to move and purchase a home, regardless of the rates. They're not getting scared of the rates, and the sellers that we're seeing have to sell their home because whatever it might be. So that's just something to keep in mind, regardless of whatever global conflicts, current events, like I said, anything that's going on. Um, I do think we have a more fine-tuned buyer and seller pool. So as we dive into the key data here, essentially in the last 5 weeks, what we've been seeing, the rates have been around 5.99 to 6.64. Now they haven't crossed 7%, and that 7% is kind of the industry standard. It's an important psychological and an economic threshold where we start to see everything start to slow. I mean, usually around 6.25 is when you'll see that. But again, I think that just fine tunes the buyers and sellers that we're looking for. Um, as far as pending sales, when we get down here to pending sales, we've got the weekly and the total. So there is a slight year over year dip in the weekly growth. So we did kind of go down from where we were. However, we still are above the year over year. So nothing really, nothing worrisome here. And then same thing with total pending sales. The total pending sales is still showing um, that we have clear growth compared to 2025. We're still above last year. So we're moving in the right direction. Again, we'll see where that goes, but nothing to worry about here. Um, it's still relatively stable overall. Again, I don't think that the demand is gone. It's just more sensitive and more fine-tuned for people. So as we get down to the mortgage purchase application data, which is basically people who are applying for mortgages, what we're seeing here is that the growth has slowed down from 5% to 1%. So it's not nearly as well, it's really not that big, but the growth is slowed essentially. We're also seeing a weekly decline of 3%. So that is going down a little bit. Again, maybe with what's going on with the rates, that could deter people from actually applying for these mortgage purchase applications. So essentially, what we're really looking here for is 12 to 14 weeks of continuous growth, positive growth week to week. And every week for the last 12 to 14 weeks, we have seen positive year over year growth, except for the last 2 weeks. So again, just something to kind of see what's going on. I think it's more buyers are hesitating with the rates, but they're not disappearing. And again, the buyers that have to move or that have to purchase, they're still out there. So um, as we move down to, we'll skip the 10-year and the mortgage spreads. As we get down to the housing inventory. So obviously housing inventory is seasonal. We always see that streak or that spring peak. The growth has slowed though versus last year. We have seen new listings jump up. So if we come down here, that's good. We did jump up year over year growth where we were below last week. So that's awesome. And then here we're seeing new inventory still kind of hanging around right where we wanted it to. So everything's, kind of the same as last week that we saw last week. So now when we get to price reductions here, uh, keep in mind, rule of thumb, standard, typically what we see is about 1/3 of all homes have a price reduction, so 33%. Last year was 35%. Right now we're hovering at 34.44%. So we're still underneath last year, just barely, kind of right around where we want to be. So again, I think as far as price reductions, that conversation needs to be around with sellers, making sure that we're pricing right, because what we are seeing is it does take longer to get the home closed and under contract and then closed. But we gotta always be staying on top of mind there. So um, tying everything together, essentially, what we're seeing, moderate rates, slowing demand, but again, there's still people that have to move. There's still people out there that need to purchase, need to sell their home. Um, and we're seeing the supply dip a little bit, but not a whole lot. It's still kind of right where we want it to be. So, if you're having conversations with buyers around this, I'm sure you have buyers that say, let's wait for rates to drop. that they never say that. Well, instead, what we could say is what we're seeing is that rates are when rates do have a dip, the demand spikes, which then in turn leads to more competition that we could face down the road. I mean, the fact of the matter is, whenever we look at any of these charts, any of these graphs, it's always in ebbs and flows. So when we go down, we're going to come back up. When we go up, we're going to come back down. As far as sellers, the buyers are still active. So when we have the conversation with them, there are still buyers out there, but this is why it's so important to price at the right price now, because we don't want to chase the market. Overall, I would say, even with the global uncertainty, the housing market is holding steadily. It's not crashing. Um, we're still moving right along. So, uh, last couple pieces I did want to dive into here, just since we looked at this last week too, is the mortgage rates and where we were at. Um, so when we come over here, last week, we did have that slight increase. Now we're seeing a slight decrease. Again, we'll kind of see where that goes right now. As of right now, the 30-year conforming is 6.331, and FHA is 6.093. Again, that's just something to kind of keep an eye on. I'm not a lender. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know everything that I'm talking about, but it is kind of interesting just to see where everything's going. And as I mentioned last week, you can come in here and you can kind of play around with this. You can change it to a 1 month, you can change it to a 6 month. If you really wanted to, you could get into this FICO scores and all that. But again, that for me, it's staying my own lane. So, and then the last piece, just kind of in a local perspective, I wanted to come over here into RE Colorado. So we do have this ability to kind of do a market watch. It'll show you new listings and things. I like to change the time frame to 7 days just to kind of see what's going on in the last week. But we can see here that we had 1,400 new listings in the last week. What we are seeing is, a few of those are going back on market. And we're seeing 1,400 price decreases in the last week too. So again, I think that ties around that narrative where we need to have that conversation with the seller that we don't want to be chasing the market, or we will be one of those price decreases that's constantly, chasing after that. And that conversation can be tough, but use this to your advantage. Show them all the price decreases that are currently just in 1 week. So then, I mean, you could dive deeper into here. You could come into new listings and kind of see exactly where those are if you wanted to check it out on the map or look at, location specific. Um, when we open up the map, we can kind of get an idea and see, okay, obviously there's a lot in Denver. The foothills kind of quiet over here. We're going to see some more up north, and then obviously some down towards the Castle Pines area, as far as new listings. So again, I think this all just touches on the point that there's still things happening. There's still buyers that have to move regardless of the rates. They still have to go find a new home, and there's still sellers that, regardless of how much they want to hold on to their 2% or 3% rate, that none of us will ever see again. I think that life happens and they have to get rid of their homes and they have to sell. So it's about us finding the business, keeping them educated, and keeping ourselves educated as well. So, and all of you are doing that just by hopping on these classes today. That's all I got for today. I know it's a little shorter than normal, but I really do appreciate you all taking time and trying to be the market expert. Any questions on anything?
Thank you. Great information.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it is. Thank you.
Of
Thanks
course.
for
And
your
you guys
time,
can always
Chris.
reach out. Hey, thank you, Kimberly. All of you guys can reach out with any questions or anything too, or if you wanted to dive deeper into some of this stuff on a one-on-one, don't hesitate to reach out. But again, I think the biggest piece here, regardless of what you're going to take, is there's still business out there. We just have to go find it. So
Okay.
True.
Thank you.
thank you guys. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful rest of your Tuesday.
Right on.
You
Take it
too.
easy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.